According to the Challenger layoff report, companies have officially laid off more than 1 million workers, marking a 54% increase this year. But with companies reporting record earnings and unprecedented stock buybacks, all while over 90% admit AI has not generated a single dollar in profit, it raises a question. Since these companies are wealthier than ever, why are they actually gutting the workforce? While the job market has evolved drastically throughout history, almost entirely in the interest of the nation's shareholders, today's layoffs follow the same underlying reality that defined the Great Recession, that corporations and government alike do not concern themselves with the livelihoods of the average American, with today's supposed layoffs tied to AI restructuring or inflationary pressures being nothing more than a coordinated effort to conceal the truth, that the powers that be cannot replace and outsource American workers fast enough.
The workers are not really part of the company. They're just, cogs in the machine. They're no different than a piece of equipment. And if we've got to replace the piece of equipment or get rid of the piece of equipment, we're going to get rid of those workers because we can make more profit by hiring other workers or hiring cheaper workers, and we can just replace them.
This is Dr. Ron Hura, an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at Howard University and a research associate with the Economic Policy Institute. Dr. Hura has spent decades documenting how offshoring and high-skilled immigration programs have been used to replace American workers, suppress wages, and quietly restructure entire industries, where I spoke with him directly on my Patreon about how American workers are being rapidly replaced by cheap labor and why the government is doing nothing to stop it.
It's not because they don't realize that there's something fishy going on. It's because they're afraid of the corporations, right? They're afraid of sticking their neck out to us and demand that, right? They have the power to demand information from those corporations. They're choosing not to ask them. And even the media seems to be afraid to ask these questions, right? They just sort of keep, reporting out Microsoft lays off 10,000 workers. Oh, it's no big deal. Back in the early 90s, if you had a layoff like that, it would be a major deal. It would be a major problem.
Today, Tim Gerner serves as the perfect example of how layoffs are viewed in the modern economy.
We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around.
An ideological shift that has been gutting the nation since the 1980s. As the offshoring of the American workforce accelerated throughout the 80s and 90s, sending millions of blue-collar jobs overseas, under the banner of global competitiveness, the demand for technical talent during the dot-com boom, driven by companies like Apple and Microsoft, gave tech companies a new justification to claim a shortage of qualified American workers and begin offshoring white-collar labor through foreign visa pipelines. In 1990, the H-1B visa program was introduced under the Immigration Act signed by George H.W. Bush, initially intended to only address temporary shortages in high-skilled fields like engineering, computing, and finance, with an annual cap set at 65,000 visas. But by the late 1990s, the U.S. Department of Commerce estimated that nearly 28% of all programming positions in the country were filled by H-1B visa holders, where following heavy lobbying from the tech industry, Bill Clinton signed the American Competitiveness in the 21st Century Act, raising that cap to 195,000 between 2000 and 2003. And while the media framed this expansion as a new response to a domestic skills shortage, a 2003 new immigrant survey found that within identical occupations, permanent residents earned 25.4% more than H-1B visa holders, showing that once again, the true intent had shifted from solving labor shortages to suppressing wages.
They get savings directly from exploiting those guest workers, but they also get savings because then they can undercut and undermine the U.S. workers' bargaining power in those fields, right? So there's a huge windfall that the employers, and this is a big gift that the government is giving to the employers at the expense of the workers. It's not a victimless crime, right? At the expense of both the guest workers and the U.S. workers.
One of the newest incentives allowing this facade to persist is the way artificial intelligence has been positioned as the next engine to economic growth. A 2025 analysis from Deutsche Bank warned that without AI-related investment, the U.S. economy would already be in a technical recession, or for the first time in American history, corporate spending on AI outpaced consumer spending as the primary driver for GDP growth. And with productivity growth stagnating, manufacturing hollowed out, the dollar weakening, household consumption increasingly sustained by credit, and federal debt projected to climb from roughly $34 trillion to over $55 trillion by 2035, One of the last remaining ways the US can signal economic strength is through the appearance of rapid innovative growth. And despite over 90% of companies failing to return a profit on their AI investments, with 35% even admitting their AI projects were just for show, the headlines of AI restructuring now provide an unbelievably convenient cover for what is really labor replacement and offshoring, alongside a temporary boost in stock price, while also giving policymakers a narrative that sounds far better than looming economic catastrophe, where this entire crisis is made even worse when the institutions responsible for informing the public are actively shaping how these issues are understood. In 1983, roughly 90% of American media was owned by about 50 different companies. Today, the same 90% is controlled by just 6 corporations, influencing what most of the country sees, reads, and hears. And we see the effects of this every single day, like when Donald Trump proposed a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas, a headline repeated across outlets without acknowledging how ownership determines which version of that story the public encounters. And this is why I use Ground News, to ensure I'm seeing how the news is actually being covered, and not just how it's being framed. Ground News is subscriber funded and aggregates reporting across thousands of sources while using 3 independent news monitoring organizations to rate outlet bias and factuality, showing where coverage is balanced and where it's being shaped by concentrated ownership. For example, when I searched for coverage of Trump's $100,000 H-1B fee proposal, Ground News showed me how differently each side had framed the story. A right-leaning headline focused on Donald Trump strategically tackling the abuse of the H-1B program, while on the left, another highlighted the severe impact this would have for tech companies, arguing it would ultimately push them to outsource even more jobs. Same story, totally different angles. It also features a blind spot feed, which highlights stories being underreported by one side of the political spectrum, helping you uncover what's missing from your usual sources and get an understanding of the full picture. So if you want to see who's shaping the headlines and what is being left out, check out Ground News using the link in the description, or scan the QR code to receive 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan. Seriously, I cannot recommend this enough. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring this video.
There's all kinds of loopholes in there. We haven't had any reports yet, but almost no employer is going to pay the $100,000 fee. So it was a shiny object, and this is what you see what's broken with the press, right? With the media, they all chase that. They had made a big deal that this is going to, price out the best and brightest and all of that kind of stuff. It's un-American, et cetera, et cetera. In reality, almost nobody's going to pay that fee. So it was a way for Trump to sort of deflect the issues to make it seem like he was doing something. In reality, they didn't do anything.
And while you would expect the Department of Labor to treat the American worker as its top priority, the reality is they are the very ones that have been allowing the most prominent H-1B loophole to continue. The most common exploitation involves outsourcing firms that hire large numbers of H-1B workers and then contract them out to major tech companies, acting as intermediaries that give corporations access to foreign labor without ever filling out their own petitions. These firms rely on what is known as a cap-exempt category, an exemption originally intended for nonprofit universities, research institutions, and government agencies engaged in scientific or academic work. To bypass the cap, many outsourcing firms create nominal partnerships or shell affiliations with universities and nonprofit research labs, allowing them to classify as cap-exempt and file visa petitions year-round. Once approved, these workers can be rotated between multiple projects or reassigned to different corporate clients without filing new petitions, multiplying the reach of each visa and stretching the intent of the law beyond recognition, while the guest workers themselves remain in a state of total dependency, where a single termination can trigger immediate loss of legal status, forcing compliance with unpaid overtime, suppressed wages, and constant relocation under the threat of deportation. In 2013, 2 of the largest outsourcing firms, Infosys and Tata Consultancy Services, were investigated by the Department of Labor for using this exact strategy. The investigation found that the average salary for an H-1B worker at Infosys was $70,882, and at Tata, just $65,565, compared to $91,990 for a domestic computer system analyst. Other partnered firms were saving even more, cutting labor costs by as much as 36 to 41%, or roughly $40,000 to $45,000 less per worker each year. Yet despite clear evidence that U.S. workers were being undercut, directly violating the H-1B program's supposed protections for wages and working conditions, the Department of Labor ruled that the practice was indeed permissible due to those workers being technically employed through a contractor, a loophole that, to this day, continues to legalize wage suppression under the headlines of mass layoffs.
This has been going on for years and years. These are huge companies that are the middlemen, tens of billions of dollars. Their market capitalization is 40, 50 billion. They have tens of thousands of H-1B workers in the US. And then the other part of it is they farm a lot of that work out to their workforce in India, their lower cost workforce in India. So it's actually facilitating the offshoring of this work.
Today, roughly 300,000 jobs in the United States are outsourced every year, with that number projected to nearly double within the next 5 years. And we can already see what this looks like in real time with companies like Amazon, which recently announced more than 14,000 new layoffs under the banner of AI restructuring, while at the same time ranking among the largest H-1B employers in the country and onboarding more foreign visa workers than the total number of domestic workers it has laid off this year. But the larger and more pressing concern appears in the hiring data itself, where an independent analysis of every Amazon job listing since 2020 using public records found that the postings in offshored countries increased by 154%, with the largest reductions coming from the United States. And as these conditions have only worsened, the societal band-aid to simply go to college and learn to code has collapsed as well, with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York finding that among college graduates, aged 22 to 27, computer science and computer engineering majors now face some of the highest unemployment rates in the country, at 6.1% and 7.5%, more than double the rates of biology and even art history graduates. While across all computer occupations, unemployment has risen from under 2% in 2019 to over 3% by 2025. At the same time, the share of IT workers inside the H-1B program has surged from 32% in 2003 to more than 65% over the last 5 years, effectively cutting out the foundation of America's future to inflate shareholders' pockets today.
You've got firms that are forcing their U.S. workers to train their H-1B replacements, right? Remember, I said H-1B is supposed to be for jobs that Americans can't do, right? You've got Americans doing the work, training their H-1B replacements. Now, why doesn't the media just say this program is ridiculous, right? I mean, it makes no sense. Why doesn't every politician say this makes no sense? Why don't they just pass a one sentence bill that says, we're going to change it this way? They could do all of those things. Why doesn't the Department of Labor and DHS issue a regulation to do something about this? They can. There's just not enough public, American workers aren't organized. There's no voice in our political system. So our democracies are supposed to be responsive, right? Of, by, for the people, right? That's the famous line from the Gettysburg Address, of, by, for the people. It's clear our democracy is not working, right? And this is a perfect example of it, right? Where if you talk to anybody who actually works in the professional fields, who know about how the H-1B program operates, they know it's a complete fraud. They know it's a scam, right? But politicians act like they can't do anything, like they're powerless. They point to somebody else because no one's really forcing their hands. And what's shocking about this is, Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary of Commerce, actually came out publicly and said the H-1B program is a scam, right? And yet they haven't. Imagine that, a government official saying, my government program, my government is scamming American people, and then doesn't do anything about it. Okay, so think about how broken our democracy is and how broken our government is when you have a government official saying, hey, I'm scamming you. Right? And there's no outrage. And there's no change.
And so what I hope that we're beginning to recognize is this shareholder primacy mindset, this cultural emergence since the 1980s, has fundamentally just demolished the American workforce. Truly, it is a plague that we are having the hardest time overcoming. Because as a worker, we are looking for who can we lean on? Who can be our voice? Where are the unions? Where is the person that is supposed to represent us? Where are they fighting for our interests? Where is the left that was traditionally in favor of the American workforce, what are they doing? And then you think, well, maybe it's not the left. Let's look at the right. They're equally as bad. Both sides are absolutely horrible and corrupt and filled with greed. And that's exactly what Dr. Hero was discussing in this entire video. Neither one of them are fighting for us. And when they are too scared or they're benefiting too much from the corporations, well, the corporations have an absolute field day in whatever it is that they want to do. And what that entails is putting as much value into the pockets of the shareholders. And so what does that mean? Gutting communities, offshoring American jobs, outsourcing American jobs, gutting entry-level jobs, getting rid of training programs. You get rid of so much training and education that you can then justify saying that the American workforce isn't educated. I don't believe that, but that's something that they can use as a tool. I think when you see a company like Amazon consistently talking about AI restructuring, and yet they're increasing their hiring by 154% in other countries, and they're also hiring more H-1B workers here in the United States than they're laying off. What a complete scam that is. Now, I think one of the things that we have as a last card that we're holding against our chest is at some point, these companies will be forced to recognize that if you gut the American workforce, you destroy the consumer base. We can't purchase our product, so their share price would have to come down. Now, I think that at some point that will happen. But the real question is how long will that take to happen? With the shareholder primacy mindset, all that matters is the next quarter. So, in all reality, that can be delayed for quite a while. So what that means is when you see that the top 7 to 10% are already making about 45% of the purchasing power, this K-shaped recovery is going to go on for quite a while, and it's going to be quite disastrous because truly our economy doesn't need the average person right now. And that's a horrible thing to face. To understand that we are reverting back to before Henry Ford did the $5 an hour day back in 1914. Before then, the economy was established fundamentally for the wealthy. All of the products and consumer goods was made for them. We're going back to that period of time. And if you don't believe me, I've already mentioned in one of my recent videos that 30% of the American workforce is making less than a factory Ford worker, than a Ford factory worker in 1914. 60% of the American workforce is not making enough to afford the essential costs of living, the basic cost of living. I think what I'm really trying to do here, and I'm trying to present, is that the future as is very bleak. And I know that that's hard to say because we want to have this optimistic discourse, and anybody that talks about anything bad is some YouTuber with fire in the thumbnail. It's just doom and gloom, or you're just depressing. I think what we have to start recognizing is that, no, this is being realistic. I haven't done as much research and as hard as I've worked on this channel just to be some doom and gloom channel. I'm talking about issues that people are facing. And the reason that I do that, and I know that this is happening, is because I talk to people. The amount of subscribers that I've actually interviewed, that I've spoken with, because of the channel that I have and the videos that I make and the way that I hold myself, is that, and the care that I put into the videos, is every single morning I wake up to about, 5 to 7 emails of young people, old people, husbands, fathers, mothers, wives, expressing how they just got fired, or they were fired 6 months ago and they haven't been able to get a job. And the most common thing that I get in these emails is, what's the point of continuing on? Why do I need to keep going? And I hope you understand what I'm alluding to. That is a disaster. Truly, that to have that large of to have that happening at that rate, at that scale, is horrible. And so this is just me caring. I just truly care. I mean, the past 2 weeks, I haven't had one night that I went to sleep before 2 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I don't have a life at all. At all. But to me, that's okay because I feel fulfilled in the work that I'm doing because I care about this. Because if it has to be me, at some point, I want to be prepared when the opportunity arises to be the voice of the American workforce. And whatever that means, I don't care what that means, but I want to be prepared for that moment. And so what I'm ultimately just trying to say is that if we don't drastically course correct amongst ourselves, it's not going to work. And we're going to experience tough times for quite a while, I believe. Do I think that maybe AI and at some point things will get better? The cycles will always get better at some point. I just don't know how long that's going to be. At this rate right now, if I'm being honest with you, I think the next decade and longer are going to be quite destructive for the average person. Now, do I think some people will be able to break through? Absolutely. It'll always happen. Do I think the majority of us are going to struggle? I do. And so I say that because I'm just trying to kind of ignite a little bit of something within you. And I don't think that means you have to go out and change everything. There isn't just one simple fix. The way that we fix it, and what you'll see in the full conversation I did with Dr. Hira on my Patreon, is he's consistently saying the way that we beat this is we have to start having some sort of we have to start holding our leaders to higher standards. And to do that, we have to agree within ourselves what those higher standards are. We have to unite amongst ourselves. So that comes through having conversations. It comes from watching this video. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, don't just say, this is a stupid video. Explain the reasons why so people can learn from it. Share it with people. Have conversations. Watch videos like this with other people so it inspires conversations. Instead of talking about whatever football game that truly does not matter, maybe cut that down by 25, 30% and talk about, hey, I think that the H-1B issue is quite a disaster, or the American outsourcing, or the wage stagnation, or a lot of these other things. We have to start having discourse. We have to start believing that we can do something. We have to start doing something. Whatever it is that you can do, just try. You can't just send some sort of try to contact your local representative one time and they don't respond, and so you give up. That isn't the way that we're going to work on this. I'm consistently doing a lot of things that I don't think will work, but I just have to hold hope that it might. And for me, that is enough to consistently keep going and trying to help you in whatever way that I can. I mean, I don't know. It definitely is frustrating at times, and I think it's important to display that emotion and for us as a society to recognize, okay, this is actually important. This isn't just doom and gloom. We have to kind of look into the pit of despair a little bit and start scraping some of this out so we can try to clean this for future generations. We have to start thinking, what will our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids, what kind of life is it that they're going to be inheriting? We have to be the ones that stop this can from, just consistently getting kicked down the road. A couple things that I just kind of need from you. I've mentioned it in almost every video here recently. If you please could just check to see if you are subscribed. I don't really want to have to explain the whole thing of what's going on with that, but just if you don't mind, just checking to see if that is the case, and if the videos are providing value to you. If you would like to support in what it is that I'm doing, I would greatly appreciate you subscribing. That allows the videos to be tested to the right audience. So it greatly appreciates, or it greatly helps this message going out. Also, please check out Dr. Hira's work. I send so many emails to different people trying to get their expertise on the channel. I don't get a response back. He responded within the hour. And I'm very appreciative of his time. He is unbelievably knowledgeable, and he was also helping me a lot in my own personal journey. So I can't thank him enough. I can't thank you guys enough for the support. Check out the full conversation I did with him. Beyond that, thank you all so much for your support. I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye-bye.